Welcome to Lashback. I'm Natalyan.
And I'm Phoebe. And today we're going to talk about, because it's been 5 years, lockdown, specifically the beginning of it.
Yeah,
What were where were you? What was happening when the world started shutting down?
firstly, I can't believe it's 5 years.
No.
Um, I was in the UK because I was transitioning between living in UK and USA, waiting for my green card at the time. And I remember specifically being at this event when it all became real because I didn't think it was really going to lock down.
Mm.
And then I had to move my flight to get into America for a family member reason. So I didn't think it would last for more than a few weeks. Do you remember how you felt?
Yeah, I remember like hearing about, this thing happening in China and then Italy. And then it wasn't really landing with me. And I had a work meeting where the boss brought the senior management team in and said, we need to talk about business continuity because of this COVID thing that's happening. And we go, oh my God, it's real. And I
Yeah.
remember the weekend just before, I had plans to go and visit a friend of mine down in Somerset. It was her son's 18th birthday. And we had this whole conversation, should I come? Should I not come? She goes, oh, don't worry about it, come. And then within like 4 weeks later, she's like, I've cleaned the whole house. And, so it was a real kind of transition into, but then I think in this country, compared to other countries, Boris Johnson's attitude and response to like shutting borders and stuff was pretty much lax, pretty more lax than anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, definitely was different in different countries. But before COVID happened, I think this is worth telling this story, which you may or may not remember. I was in a music event called NAM, the National
Yes,
Association of Music Merchants in California, in Anaheim. And I got really sick there. And this was in January of
I
2020.
remember that.
And I was with a group of people, and we all had a T-shirt because we all got really sick that said Namthrax on it because you're around so many people sharing microphones, singing with all the big music people in the universe. Um, and I was getting worse and worse. And I think there was like 15 people I know that all had the same thing. And I'd never had anything like it. I mean, I didn't feel like I was dying, but I didn't get out of bed and it lingered. And I realized that was COVID. But I still wasn't particularly concerned, being youngish, healthy, fit. I still thought it was not dramatic, but maybe I did for a bit. But it's funny, I think the key thing about this episode that we should talk about is how your thoughts change, because from one week to the next I changed, or one day to the next I changed, like stay home people, whereas before I didn't stay home.
Yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it? It was interesting. Initially I was a little bit I wouldn't say annoyed, I think that's the wrong word, but how
I
some
get it.
really anxious and going out and buying toilet paper and like emptying out the supermarkets and me just thinking, for goodness sake, will you just
Yeah,
calm
yeah,
down?
it's selfish.
Yeah, and I had a lot of those sort of, I guess it's two types of people in the world, the people that go, oh my God, and the people that go, oh, it's fine. Um, and then my day job furloughed me, which in the UK was a system to like
Yeah,
don't go into work, but
get
government
paid.
support, government will support, and but I was also teaching yoga and had a lot of coaching clients at the time as well, and that so my day job work went down, and my coaching and yoga went all up, all became online,
Yeah,
um, and I just spent the first month really, really busy, but completely at home. And I remember toward the end of April thinking, I miss my shoes because I hadn't put shoes on. I'd gotten dressed every day and stuff, but I hadn't really walked out the house much. I would put my trainers on to go walk around the block. I missed my shoes. So funny.
so
And
strange.
the open mic I ran, you remember you came to it, didn't you? We did it, started doing it online. And I spent my Thursdays getting dressed up to the nines to not leave the house, which is kind of these days more normal, but at the time it felt utterly absurd.
It's so funny that we're talking about this because in preparation for this episode, we just kind of brainstormed a bit. Sometimes we do a bit of homework, but the point of Lashback is to you know, to talk, right? And it's all flooding back to me now. We're going to have a multitude of episodes about this, because it is literally flooding back to me how what routines I got into. Like, I was flying between the UK and US, and sometimes via a different country for family purposes. I lost people in to COVID days apart, so I was supporting people trying to get to different places. So I had a very unique experience. I even spent time in Barbados in a hotel room locked up. Like, it's the strangest thing. And it seems like a different lifetime ago now. But the whole routine we get into, like, I was spending time in the studio. I wasn't doing a contract of music or business at the time. And I remember having like a certain, like cocktail at like 6 p.m. each night, sitting out on the deck. And I was lucky enough to have a big garden.
Same.
Not all people had that. That's definitely something we could talk about, because other people, I mean, did you know people that were in a less convenient environment than yourself?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a little garden, which was a lifesaver because I could still go
Yeah.
outside. But being in London, it's not, a lot of
Mm.
people don't have gardens. And I remember being quite concerned about, not that I knew anyone personally, about the people who weren't happy at home, who could no longer leave. And
Yeah.
that being me really feeling for people on that, because I got kind of a bit starved of, because I live on my own, it's not like I had flatmates to hang out with. A bit starved of sort of human connection
Yeah.
outside of phone calls and voice notes. Friend and I were quite a habit of spending like 20-minute voice notes to each other.
Got an episode about that.
Yeah, totally. That's last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it kind of, I kind of loved it and I kind of hated it at the same time. We were fortunate to have good weather. I was fortunate to have good weather because I could go and sit out in the good weather. But the
Mm.
people that lived in flats were complaining about being too hot in their homes because we don't have aircon in the UK, as you know.
Mm.
It was
Yeah,
really
it's
bizarre.
crazy. It is bizarre. And I did think about those people a lot, people in, as you say, environments, in not great home environments, whether that's domestic abuse or whatever, people that were running out of money for their bills, people were trying to get their rent deferred, but then, you do have to think as well about the person who's got to pay the mortgage, and they are in trouble, and it's kind of spirals. And I was quite lucky in the sense that I had some money to live off, and then I did actually get a business contract, so I was living quite comfortably, which was, I had my own bad experiences, but by no means was that in comparison to some people,
Yeah,
you
people
know
like
with some of it.
some people that exist on gigs or going out to work that couldn't. I know somebody who was a musician that actually started working for a supermarket because
Oh,
that
people did.
supermarkets needed their help.
Yeah. Well, and they needed the money. And there was actually, for the music world, and we have an episode, about a couple of episodes about performing, because we're performers. But some celebrity musicians, like a guy from Chic, for example, he earns all his money from touring. I mean, he might earn other money, but they, the celebrities or the, real big touring musicians spoke up and said, my income has gone, which
Mm.
is a little bit sad that it took that to kind of speak loud about that, and Spotify and all of those things. That's another episode. But, that really did, just in the creative industries, just completely shut off someone's career
And
completely.
restaurants as well. If they didn't jump on the Deliveroo wagon, they were, you
Yeah,
know,
hospitality, creative industries, all those different components were completely cut off. And some people literally couldn't get help. Like in the UK, they had grants you could get, but I wasn't eligible because I had a limited company, although it's just me.
yeah,
You know, in the US, they had some money they gave out, but I wasn't eligible for that. So luckily, I had a little bit of a nest egg. Otherwise, I would have been absolutely screwed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was really interesting. I got really burnt out by the end of the April, mid-May. I had to stop coaching so much because I came to this realization that the world is in anxiety, stress. And I've been
Mm.
working really hard in and out of my garden on the phone or, teaching yoga online.
Yeah.
And then not really processing, oh my God, what's happening to the world? And that was kind of yeah, I had to sort of give myself a beat in the May time. Just go, whoa, actually, let me
Yeah.
think about what's happening here.
I was a bit like that. I was in a bit of a bubble because I was doing that transition between UK and USA, and I lost, um, two relatives, days apart, and it was a bit of a shock, and I hadn't processed it at all. I was just in this weird bubble of I don't have to get up too early. I can be in the studio all night, and then I start getting stressed because money's running out, and then I think, oh, I must get back to the UK. Can I get back to the UK? I must not get
Will we ever
COVID.
travel again?
Yeah. And then I went from thinking COVID was, it's not going to hurt anyone to really being paranoid about it, like
And it's
absolutely
changing the
paranoid
world.
about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
I remember you telling me we spoke, I think, on the phone, maybe we were voice noting, and you'd said you'd bleached the whole house. Yeah. But
I was like undressing.
on a
I was
positive
undressing.
side, in London and probably in a lot of other cities, and because there wasn't the same amount of traffic on the road, and it was March, April time,
Yeah.
I think the bird population doubled in London. That's because the mating, they could hear their mating calls because there was no busy roads and stuff. And
Oh,
come
really?
later on in the summer, it was palpable that there were more birds in the sky
I
and no
did not know that.
planes in the sky. It was actually, I think somebody that I know from like my local community, much older, said this is what the skies used to look like when I was a kid. No chemtrails,
Wow.
planes. This is this peace that we have. This is what life used to be like, which I thought was a really interesting perspective.
I've not heard that or thought of that, and that really is interesting. We
Mm.
need to talk more about this definitely, because there's pros and cons. Obviously, there's the significant cons, and obviously human life and trauma, and there's a lot of things that are going to have impacted the world negatively because of this.
Still to this
But there's
day.
those things, yeah, yeah, and it's crazy. And look, we're going to talk more about this in other episodes, definitely, because there's a lot to unpack here. And I think it's really important to talk about it, and we're interested in it. But just to kind of ask you a question, Phoebe, because I've had this thought myself. What changed for you from the beginning of lockdown to the end in terms of, listening to your government and how you acted?
Oh, that's really interesting question. So it came to the middle of the summer, and the UK government said that we could get into groups of six. And there's a park near me called Hampstead Heath. And I ended up by the middle of summer still not doing the day job,
Mm,
cut back on the yoga and the coaching, lots of free time, and not having to job hunt as well, which was really interesting. First time in my life. And we got into meeting in groups of six on Hampstead Heath. I mean, on a Saturday night, Hampstead Heath was like a local pub beer garden. I've never seen it so vibrant, and loads of people had flocked. And there was this kind of
camaraderie.
sense of all of this is ridiculous. We're not having it. We're not getting ill anymore. And the police would come around and everyone hurry into groups of six. But actually, even to this day, I've got quite a big social circle from people I met in lockdown. And it kind of split people, didn't it? The vaxxers and the
It did.
anti-vaxxers, the stay-at-homers, the forget it. And I think I always, with all of these things, I don't like polarity. I try and find a middle route.
So.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely changed my thoughts. At the beginning, I wasn't really worried in any way, shape, or form, and then that specifically happened to me, losing people. So my thoughts changed, and I was very. I've even seen like Facebook posts that have popped up saying, "Can you just stay at home, you selfish people?" Which is totally unlike me. I can't believe I said that. And then I went full round saying, "I'm never again going to be told that I can't visit someone who's dying or something. I'm never going to be controlled like that again." Now it doesn't mean to say that I'd put someone at risk, but I just think that I'm a grown adult and I can make my own decisions, that if I went to see you, Phoebe, and you wanted me to wear a mask, I would, or I wouldn't see you, or I wouldn't go near you. But I can make my own decisions, and some of it did make sense
Executive
to me.
decision.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't tell me that I can't be near somebody, because that has human. I think we all realize how important human interaction is. So it's
really,
definitely a process.
really is important. You mentioned the word control, and I
Yeah,
think that's a really key thing. I remember it was probably much after maybe it was September, October time. So things had calmed down a bit, and there was maybe another lockdown coming, which of course it did. I remember being in a shopping mall near my mum's house out in the sticks, and they having them having the arrows on the floor, in where you could stand in queues and stuff. And I absolutely detested that. And I was walking out of these doors with the wrong doors. I wasn't following the arrows, and these three security guards on a break. There was no one else there. Told me to go through the other doors, and I just looked at them and I went, "There's no one here." And I
yeah,
walked through the doors I wanted to walk through. But I thought, it takes our neurology 21 days to form a new habit. And we were in lockdown for much longer than that. And how are our brains now used to being told where to stand?
yeah. That's the bit that
Level
got
of
me.
control.
Yeah, and I was somewhat, well, not somewhat, very disappointed in how easily human beings can be controlled, and their belief systems can do a 360 so rapidly.
Mm,
Like, I get rules when they make sense. I've always been a rule abider unless it doesn't
okay.
make sense. And even at school, if you told me to do something that didn't make sense, I'm not going to do it.
I always ask why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if there's nobody there, use your common sense that nobody's there. So just leave me alone. But it came to the point of, I can tell you what to do because the government's told me this, that I have the power to do that. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think I
that's the
wanted to
bit.
go through those doors in that shopping mall story. I think I wanted to go through those doors because my shoes were hurting my feet and they were closer. I didn't want to walk the long way around. I was in pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think things have to make sense. Like, if you, like, I know people that, older people or elderly people that caught COVID and never left their house once. You know why? Because they were going to get it and they got food deliveries, because you're going to have some kind of contact. And I think limiting that is obviously key. I get that, but certain things, just, you can only fool people for so long, right,
Yeah.
before you start questioning it. And again, if something happened, like, God forbid something happened like this again, I would certainly make the sensible decisions and not put anyone at risk or do anything someone didn't like, because I care about other people. But you're not going to tell me that I can't go and see somebody.
I would also say something I would repeat if it happened again is an absolute objection to using something like that to hate other groups.
Absolutely.
Just like live and let live. And if you don't want to be put in harm's way, stay in, but don't
Yeah,
get mixed up in what other people are doing. Let people
yeah,
be. you know.
yeah.
And I think about
People.
the young uns, people that are 15 and 16 at that time who are now 21, 22. I'm out and about in London, and there are young people that literally don't know how to behave in busy spaces. Like, they'll stand in front of the stairs and they'll have to say, "Excuse me." They've got no kind of intuition of just kind of moving out of the way. People on the tube as well. We talked about that the other week as well. Young people that while their brains are formulating mid-teen times around social encoding and how to be like a bigger person in the world, like a fully grown tall person in the world, but
Yeah,
there's definitely a lack of skill set, and there's also a lot more anxiety in that group these days
definitely.
because they didn't get that social development at that time when you're supposed to. We
I
need
couldn't
human
agree more.
interaction. We need it.
Yeah, and I did think about that. Like, I had a little cousin that, during their university, I can't remember what year they were in,
Couldn't have
but
done university on lockdown. Wow.
yeah, you're missing out on something that they graduated and their friends graduated, but it was delayed and they couldn't do the last year. That I mean, you're never going to get that back. So I really do feel for the kids. I really
Yeah.
do, because that's a significant time, as you say, in your life, for social interaction, for fun. You know, good old fun, and just being a young adult for the first time ever. You're never going to get that first back. You know, So, I mean, I do find myself quite lucky, really. Not lucky in the losses, but lucky in life that, I actually, it's really weird how this is triggering a lot of memories for me of how my day was.
Yeah,
And I think I got into a routine of things that I really enjoyed, and I got really grateful for things. So I went on a journey myself. We need to talk more about this. We're at time.
we
We
are.
definitely need more about this.
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's have
Listen, tell us your stories. Comment. What was lockdown like for you? How did it change your perception? Did you stick with the same um, feelings about the whole thing from the start to the end? Do you still feel that you're affected by it in some way, in the way that you live and go about your life? Really
absolutely.
interested to hear.
Absolutely, we'd absolutely love to hear, and we can talk more about this. So your comments will be read, and we'll talk about them in the next one if you wish. So thanks for listening, guys.
Take it easy.
See you later.